Hey guys, come over Fargo, Season 3, Episode 2, The Principle of Restricted Choice, and as you guys know, I was not a huge fan of the season premiere, but I still did really enjoy it. I just felt like that particular story we've seen done before. We've seen it definitely been attempted multiple times, and I think I was honestly a little bit too high on it. I probably would have given it a B plus looking back, but I definitely did enjoy the premiere. However, this episode, that was definitely not the case. I really enjoyed this episode actually a lot more than the premiere. We got a little more in depth with some of the characters here. I think we went some very interesting directions with where the story is really going to go, particularly Gloria in general. I was not really that invested in the first episode. This episode, I definitely liked her a lot more. But let's just get into this episode because I definitely do want to get into where I think this overall season is going to go. So we start off actually with Gloria, and she's puzzling over the stash of sci-fi books that she's found in the secret box and under the floorboards in her stepfather's house. Remember, she just randomly found this author named Thaddeus Mobley, not really knowing what to make of it, and she thumbs through each looking for anything that might be hidden in the pages, but she's really coming up empty. She can't really find anything that's significant, and next she examines this old newspaper article with the headline "Sci-Fi Scribe Wins Golden Planet," and she's then interrupted by the only other officer in the town's police department who shows up telling her it's time to meet the new police chief who will be coordinating the recently combined police department. And we meet Officer Donnie Mashman, who he picks up one of the paperbacks asking if it's author Thaddeus Mobley who was involved in Ennis's murder. And Gloria says that Thaddeus is Ennis, so there's definitely a connection. Like, she's convinced this has to be her father. And Gloria and Donnie then arrive at the Eden Valley Public Library, which also serves as the police department, and strangely, once again, she can't get the electric door to open for her. We don't know what this is all about, but Carrie Coon's characters seem to have horrible luck with machines. We don't really know what it is. She had terrible luck in The Leftovers, and now she's having terrible luck in Fargo. I don't really know what that's all about, but she asks if Donnie sees her, wondering if she's somehow invisible, and he asks if that's a trick question, and you can tell that Donnie doesn't really respect her that much. Like, she's not really respected by this police department, and it makes sense, because he's, like, really the only other officer there, which I thought was interesting, but now we learn that Emmett and Cy are so concerned with Varga and the people he represents that they've actually turned to their lawyer Irv for help, and they tell him, which is understandable. I mean, Varga just seemed like someone who would run them out of business and would just take over everything, so they're going to him, and they tell him all about trying to return the money that they borrowed, and he wonders why they made the shady deal in the first place. I mean, this guy just seems like a shady character. Like, why would you do something that dumb? And he offers them the name of a criminal attorney on account of the fact that they'll probably wind up in jail when this is all over, which, I mean, yeah, we know that's probably going to happen. One of them's going to die, one of them's going to go to jail. At least that's how I think this is going to go down. But Emmett doesn't want to be lectured. He just wants his lawyer to find the company and make them take their $1 million loan back. That's really all he wants, because clearly this Varga guy is kind of hopeless. He's not going to help them. He is very much just going to control them, and they drive home, and Emmett's concerned that he was too hard on Ray at the anniversary party, and Cy really has no sympathy for him, telling Emmett everything he did was simply for Ray's own good, and Emmett thinks that maybe he should just give his brother the stamp back. Like, that should be the right thing to do, like, just give him the stamp, but Cy thinks that Ray is just a loser who won't stop asking for more and more, and as we've seen, that's really not the case. Like, you can very well tell why Ray wants the stamp, and I do like that Emmett is very regretful, and I do think that Cy is very much his Nikki. Like, Nikki is very much calling the shots for Ray. I don't know if Cy is necessarily calling the shots for Emmett, but he definitely is a big influence in why this feud kind of took place in the first place. So back at Laura's office, Irv is having a horrible time using his computer. He has no idea how to search the internet for info on Varga, and before his secretary can stop him, he clicks on a link which actually shuts down his computer completely, and the secretary's computer also goes off, so clearly Varga, again, he's just not to be trusted at all, but they determine it's just the computers and not a power outage, and as Irv's turned off, it appeared as though a photo was taken of him and his secretary staring at the screen. We don't know what Varga's really up up to, but in general, this is just kind of a scary thing to think about. But he's accompanying this large truck into one of Emmett's lots, and the parking lot attendant doesn't want to let them through, but Varga assures the attendant, who is slow on the uptake, that the attendant's employer gave him permission despite the fact that it's against the law to park an 18-wheeler on this particular property, and he has them drive to a spot against the attendant's orders. And while that's happening, the attendant gives Emmett a call, gives Sai a call, and he confirms that Varga has permission. So obviously, this is not what they wanted at all. They wanted to make sure that he did not have permission, and Sai then strolls into Emmett's office, and Emmett's very concerned about crime in his sleepy little town. He's reading a newspaper article about 82-year-old Ennis's death, and he's disappointed this is no longer the Minnesota that he knows. Now, as we know, Ennis was mainly killed because of Maurice and how stupid Maurice really is. So I'm guessing that there really isn't much crime in this town usually. I mean, I don't know where he's been, but Fargo is not exactly a town that is associated with peace. Usually there's a lot of town going on, and Sai finally reveals what he came into Emmett's office to share, which is the news about the semi-truck and Varga. And Emmett's very concerned that the truck is parked there against code, which, you know, he's the parking lot king. He didn't really get a say there, but Sai is more concerned at what could possibly be in the truck, which, I mean, yeah, that is what they should be concerned about. Sai thinks it might be harboring slave girls, while Emmett thinks that it has to contain drugs. And either way, it's very bad news, so Emmett suggests they just drive over to the lot, but Sai prefers plausible deniability, which means they should stay far, far away. So they decide to wait and see what Irv, actually, which is their lawyer, discovers. So we then see Chief Mo Damick, who he's underwhelmed by Gloria's police station, and the only holding cell is a closet where they store paper towels and the department's computers, which are still in their boxes. And just this police station in general, it's very much, it's very underwhelming, which is even kind of an understatement. It's not really a station at all. Like I said, there's really just a cell of closets, and it's terrible. Like, they really are very low on money or whatever, and Mo's then found to learn that Gloria doesn't like or use computers, preferring to type reports and send them by telex, which makes sense. I mean, she doesn't seem to have much success with machines, so it kind of makes sense why she does that, and she just calls someone if she needs a record researched, and Mo is over this attitude. You know, he's kind of tired that she doesn't want to do that, and he's going to let her interview her potential witness at the gas station and take a few days off to settle Ennis's affairs, but then they'll sit down and discuss how the police department will be run moving forward. So he kind of seems like the one in charge. He really wants to put this police department back on top, because clearly things are not great with them right now, and he really does want to turn things around. And this already makes Gloria's story a lot more interesting, because the other storylines, you know, we've seen a lot of officers working together and things like that, and they've been in completely regular police stations, and everything seemed formidable and things like that. Here, this is kind of like a rundown police station that clearly is going out of business, and this story in general, I'm definitely interested in seeing how Chief Damick really does end up, you know, turning things around, if he actually can turn this office around, which seems kind of on the verge of running out of business at this point. So Gloria arrives at the gas station where parole Maurice stopped on his way to kill Ennis, and the attendant recalls it was a weird night, and when Maurice came in, he thought that he was weird and Russian, which, I mean, he was both of those things. I wouldn't say he was just weird, it was kind of an idiot, and he also remembers raising a ruckus when Maurice tore a page from the phone book, and Gloria puts on gloves. She looks at the torn edges in the book, and she takes the phone book as evidence in case there are fingerprints. And we then see Ray. He's busy at work with a newspaper spread out on his desk, and the home invasion murder is front and center, but what's really concerning him is that a rat ate his computer cord, and he needs to look up info on Maurice's death. So he asks his boss, Scotty, if he can use his computer, and Scotty begins talking about Nikki's ass, which I thought was really funny, because as we know, Nikki and Ray aren't supposed to be dating, so this is completely okay for Ray, because they're really not supposed to be dating. As we know, Ray is Nikki's parole officer, so they're really not supposed to be in a relationship, but Ray notes that the police list Maurice's death as accidental, and then he announces that Maurice, who his boss of course doesn't know is dead, has missed his 9 a.m. appointment. So obviously, why he didn't mention this, we don't know, but Scotty tells him to issue a bolo, which apparently Ray should have done without asking. So Ray passes by a man scrubbing Maurice's blood off the sidewalk before entering Nikki's apartment, and he tells Nikki that Maurice's death was ruled accidental. So right now they're in the clear. It seems that everything's fine with them, and Nikki's very distracted, setting the table, hoping to impress a new sponsor who's coming over. And when Ray says it's too soon to be thinking about a sponsor for their bridge team, Nikki actually slaps him twice. So you can tell that again, Nikki, she always gets what she wants, and she's very much calling the shots. But she does love him, even though it's very much like a tough love situation. But she thinks his energy is blocked, and he confesses it's because he's never killed anyone before. It turns out this is the first person that Ray's actually killed, and he admits he feels very guilty about it, and Nikki calls him her honey bear and says he has the soul of a poet, and Ray is concerned that they're going to be caught. Even though this was ruled as accidental, he's very worried that this is eventually going to turn into a case, and I mean, if we know Fargo, that's probably what's going to happen, and Nikki's sure it'll be fine. Nikki even thinks they shouldn't worry about Ennis's murder investigation since he was old and no one really cares, which obviously she's very wrong about that. We know Gloria will see this through and will make sure that whoever is responsible for that is put to justice, which of course Maurice is the one technically responsible, but of course he's dead, so Nikki and Ray are definitely in a lot more trouble than they think they are. And Nikki says the only thing they find, if they do look into it, is unfathomable pinheadry, which could be one of the best descriptions of a crime in history, and Nikki figures that it's Ray's dysfunctional relationship with Emmett that has really messed it all up. So she wants him to end the fight, believing they won't land a sponsor with Ray in the States. So Ray has two choices. Either he makes peace with his brother, or they steal the stamp. As we know, that's what they tried to do. Didn't work out the last time, so making peace with his brother kind of seems like the best option on the table. You know it's not going to happen because it's only episode 2, but, it seems like kind of the best option on the table. So Ray shows up at Emmett's place, ready to make peace at this point. Like, he honestly does want to make peace, and Emmett's concerned something horrible has happened since it's 10:30 p.m., since Stella's asleep. He asks Ray to step out to the benches set up outside in the snow to talk, and while they talk, Nikki sneaks in the house looking for the stamp, so she's going to make sure both of these things happen, that they make peace and they steal the stamp. And Ray apologizes to his brother, and Emmett admits he actually feels bad about their relationship too, and Ray reveals that he wants to bury the hatchet, and Emmett's stunned that he actually came out to apologize to him, and Ray tells his brother he's proud of him, adding Emmett doesn't owe him anything. The brothers make up, they shake on it, and then Ray leaves while Emmett briefly remains outside with a genuinely happy smile on his face, like he actually made peace with his brother. I didn't think it was actually going to happen, but as we know, it's not going to last because Nikki just basically tried to steal the stamp, so this definitely, while it seems peaceful right now, this definitely is not going to last for very long. So meanwhile, inside the house, while they are making peace, there's a framed drawing of this donkey hanging where the stamp used to be, and Nikki uses a flashlight. She begins searching through Emmett's office desk drawers. She finds a recent receipt for the rental of a safe deposit box and quickly comes to the conclusion that Emmett has secured the stamp where Ray can't get to it, which was very smart on Emmett's part, thinking that Ray would probably come looking for it. And Emmett then heads upstairs. He sees a light under the door of his office. Nikki's gone, but she did leave a message saying, "Who's the ass now?" So she knows very well where it is, that it's in that safe deposit box, and it looks like it's written in blood. So Emmett looks into one of his desk drawers, and he sees a used tampon on top of his papers. So the fact that she literally used period blood to write this, I mean, it's disgusting, but it's a great way to get revenge. I mean, Nikki in general, you can tell that she does want this feud to end, but Emmett is really not making it easy by doing that. So Attorney Irv then walks to his car in the parking garage. He finds Yuri from the Ukraine leaning against it. Irv talks about the Cossacks, and Yuri says he's one, which confuses Irv, and before allowing Irv to answer, he asks if he was searching for Varga, and Yuri and Mimo then toss Irv over to the side of the parking garage, and Nikki then meets Ray at the prearranged spot down the street. He tells him that Emmett hid the stamp and left a burrow in its place, and Ray says it felt good talking to his brother, and he thinks they've actually made up, which I like that Nikki actually did come clean and confess that she did leave a message behind. And Nikki's impressed with Emmett's game playing skills and says that he may have won this round, but two can play at that. So they hear a siren and speed off, and Ray is still confused as to what Nikki really did. He doesn't really know what exactly she did. You know, it's kind of one of those things you kind of have to see to believe, and Emmett and Cy then stare at Nikki's messages in the drawer, and Emmett's positive that his brother tricked him so Nikki could just break in. You know, he doesn't think that piece was actually sincere. He thinks that this was just a way for Nikki to break in and get the stamp. So, and that's not the truth. I mean, truthfully, I think Ray did want to make peace with Emmett. He came there as a way to finally bury the hatchet, and Emmett reveals that the stamp isn't hidden. The maid actually broke the frame, and it's being fixed. So Emmett says the gloves are off, and he's now done with his brother. There is no possible way they're going to make peace. This is it. They've now gone to war, and Cy agrees. He's going to let Ray know he's dead to Emmett, and while they're talking, Emmett gets a call saying that Irv jumped off the garage, and just casually that Irv jumped off the garage, so now he's useless to them. He obviously is dead, so they can't use him now, but Gloria and her son then visit the funeral home, and the funeral home director was definitely not a friend of Ennis, calling the deceased a horrible man. I don't know how they got this director, but he wonders if Gloria has contacted Ennis's family, and she says she has no idea if he really had any other family or any friends who need to be contacted. So even though this was her father, she really did not know a lot about him, and the funeral home directors actually never heard the name Thaddeus Mobley, which was a lawn shot that Gloria tossed out, and the subject then turns to picking out the coffin. So again, not really getting many answers in the way of Thaddeus Mobley, unfortunately. I felt bad for Gloria because you can tell she's very determined for these answers, and no one really seems to be helping her, but Ray's then in a local restaurant. He's eating breakfast when Cy, driving a Hummer, pulls in the parking lot, and Cy sits across from him at the table. Ray says he's going to call his brother to make things right, and Cy then squashes that idea right down, telling him to never speak to Emmett again, and Ray can't believe that's what his brother really wants, and Cy says he's serious, that this is non-negotiable. After the stunt he pulled, which, you know, he thinks that, again, this was all Ray's doing, and Ray looks confused. So Nikki clearly didn't give him all the details, and I think it was interesting, the fact that Nikki did tell him the truth, but she didn't tell him everything. There was a huge part that she left out, and that really is going to be a real detriment to Ray and Emmett making up anytime soon. So Cy then pounds the table. Ray warns him to watch his tone, calling him an errand boy. Cy then peels off a $20 bill and tells Ray that that's the last money he'll get from Emmett, because as we know, Emmett was the one giving Ray all this money, and Ray then flips him off as Cy leaves the restaurant. He flips him off again just as Cy gets into his car. Ray watches from his booth in the restaurant. Cy then backs up into his Corvette, smashing the driver's side, and with that, he basically just declared war. He gains a little speed, he backs up again, he crunches the driver's side before driving away, flipping the bird through the sunroof, and he roars out of the parking lot, swipes another car as he exits to the streets, and that was an awesome scene. Just seeing Cy take matters into his own hands, you can tell he's determined to go to war against Ray. Like, even though Emmett, he was obviously in disbelief over what Ray really did, Cy will make sure that they get the last word. You can definitely tell, and back at his office, Emmett can't raise the receptionist on the phone, so he heads up to the reception area only to find Varga, and Varga is the last person that Emmett really wants to see right now. So at this point, they've claimed an empty office. They're bringing dozens of boxes. I mean, basically, they have taken over everything, and Emmett's very upset. He can't believe this is happening, and when Cy arrives, he joins Emmett and VM in Emmett's office. VM tells them that he likes Minnesota for its blandness after having traveled all around the globe, and Emmett and Cy then reiterate their desire to pay back the loan, but Varga says that they're partners and they should lie back and enjoy themselves. There's nothing that can be done at this point, and Varga adds that he loves the parking lot industry because it runs on cash. It doesn't use technology, and that means you can't verify the income. So Cy points out that if Varga gooses the numbers, it will make someone pay attention, and Varga responds by saying that they'll just buy more properties, including some multi-purpose ones, maybe even get a new stadium. I mean, he has all of these ideas for them, and Emmett seems kind of intrigued by the idea, but Varga points out that they're trapped. Like, they don't really get a say. He's going to take over no matter what. but on the upside of paper, they will be billionaires. And Varga warns him that he's hanging out for a few days, but is leaving Yuri and Mimo, who are the men who killed Irv, behind to watch over things. And as if that didn't freak them out, he adds his condolences for the death of their attorney, mentioning that it was avoidable. So they definitely know that he did not commit suicide, that this was basically their doing, and that is the way this episode ends. Really great stuff overall, but let's just get into this episode and where I think the rest of the season is going to go from here. So, like I said, guys, the last episode, the premiere, didn't exactly sell me. This did. I loved pretty much everything about this episode. I thought there was a lot of great stuff going on here. Let's first talk about Varga, because holy shit, what a character this is. I know a lot of people said we don't have that, like, Lorne or Peggy type character this season, because every season we do seem to have that character. Season 1 it was definitely Malvo. Season 2 was, Hanzi. This season, it definitely is Varga. Varga is this character who, he's just such a despicable guy. Just everything he does, he is determined to own everything. He is determined to run them out of business, and while they are going to end up being billionaires, I mean, this is going to end up terribly for them, because as Varga said, the one thing he loves about the parking lot industry is that it doesn't use technology. It runs completely on cash, and he can run them out of business basically as much as he pleases. And I do think this is going to end up being a very bad situation for Emmett and Sai, but as we can see, Emmett's kind of looking at the good of it all, like, this is, like, he's kind of interested that he's going to build them all these stadiums, but at the same time, I mean, he did kill their attorney. Like, that's something that Emmett really does need to understand. I think he does, but I don't think this is going to go nearly as well as I think it's going to. Varg is a character I'm absolutely loving. I'm loving what we're getting of him so far. Just everything about him I think is really awesome. But let's talk about the feud between Emmett and Ray, because it has definitely gone even further at this point. I think that there definitely was a feud before, over the stamp, but now it's a war. Now it is definitely a war. After Sai has crashed, Ray's car, I think definitely this feud, it's not going to end anytime soon. The only way it's going to end is them killing each other at this point. I think that's how it's going to end. They're going to end up killing each other at the end of the season. I just, it sounds like a very Fargo way to do things. Fargo's always kind of been like a biblical type of show. Like, it's always kind of been that way, and I feel like, like sort of like a Greek tale, and I feel like this is kind of the way they're going to end that. Like, it's going to end with them killing each other, but again, we'll have to see really the way that's going to go down and how that's all going to play out. But now we have 3 crimes to investigate, because Irv, as we know, was killed, and Emmett and Sai know very well that it was Varga's men's doing, that this was completely avoidable, that it wasn't, that Irv wanted to kill himself or anything like that. In fact, I think he tried to stay away from Varga. Like, he was on Emmett's side for the most part, and I think he did try to get them away from Varga. But unfortunately, Varga's just too powerful of a man that they can't seem to outrun him. They can't seem to get him away, and even though they want to, they just can't get away from him, unfortunately. So I guess they're just going to have to deal with him for the rest of the season, which I'm fine with. I love David Thewlis. I think he's adding so much to this show, and I love it. He's the first character that is not American. Like, he is British, and I think it actually really helps him stand out more, and his teeth in general are just terrifying to look at. Varg in general, I'm really loving that character. But Nikki really needs to be a lot more sincere with Ray, because there is a huge part that she did not tell him about, and I don't know how this is going to go for Nikki and Ray. I mean, they seem like they're in the clear. Like, they seem like, all right, the crime's fine. No one cared about Ennis. Everything's fine. Maurice is, right now, it's been ruled as, completely accidental, and everything's fine. But obviously, that's not the case. I think definitely knowing Gloria, seeing how persistent she is to make sure that the murder of Ennis is in fact, that murder of Ennis, that case is closed. You can definitely tell she's going to do whatever she can to make sure that case is closed. And, I'm definitely seeing how that all really does play out, because it seems like there's not many police there. Again, as we see, this police station is a lot more run down than some of the others we've seen. There's not many officers left there. The chief is willing to turn things around, but we don't really know if that's actually going to work, and it's mainly because of Gloria's unconventional style. Machines don't really work for her, so she resorts to, like, typewriters and things like that, which I think is really interesting, and it makes sense, too, because, like I said, technology always seems seems to not be on her side, so we don't really know what that's all about, why exactly that's happening to her. I don't know if that connects to the whole leftovers as well, like why it's not working for Nora. I think those are two completely different entities on why that's not working. But I definitely think it is interesting that technology is not seem to be working very well for Gloria. And I'm sure we're going to find out why that is eventually, but we'll have to see what ends up happening there. As far as Thaddeus Mobley, what is the deal with Thaddeus Mobley? I mean, anyone that Gloria seems to go to, I've never heard of Thaddeus Mobley. Who the hell is Thaddeus Mobley? No one seems to recognize that name. There definitely is some sort of significance with that name. And I do think Gloria's onto something, that her father is definitely connected to Thaddeus Mobley. I don't know if he is Thaddeus Mobley, but I do think there's a very deep connection that Gloria is definitely on to something. Like, I don't think this is something that should just go unnoticed. I think she definitely does have a point. You don't just hear the name Thaddeus Mobley and not think that he's not connected to it. I think definitely there is a very big connection that they're just not seeing at this point. So I'm definitely interested in getting into that. I think it's going to be very interesting once we get into, what the whole deal with Thaddeus Mobley really is, because there definitely is a much bigger connection than other people are thinking, and that's something I'm definitely very much getting into. And then as far as, I guess the only other thing to talk about really is what's really going to go on with Maurice. How is this murder really going to go? Is Gloria going to find out about it? Because I'm sure if she finds out that Maurice is dead, then she's going to start to put things together about, how Maurice died. I like that this season's a little bit more slow paced. Like, sure, the feud is not exactly slow paced, but the way they're doing the whole crime is definitely a little more slow paced than usual. At this point, I think she'd know what would have happened to Maurice, but there's just a lot more parts to it than usual, and I like that. I like it's a little bit more complex. Overall, guys, I really did enjoy this episode. This definitely did get me more on board for the season. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what happens with the rest of the season. I really did enjoy this one. I'm definitely going to give Fargo Season 3, Episode 2, The Principle of Restricted Choice, a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. So over, guys, remember this episode of Fargo. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Left your thoughts in it. I actually really am enjoying this season now, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for the recent episode of Fargo, which I've heard from many people is one of the best episodes the show has done, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.